We're looking at more excuses that we can come up with. Harish Patel says, a common excuse: I have to look after my wife and children. I'm doing my karma first. Dinesh Diwan says, I have involvement in worldly activities. Narinda says, practicing the Bhagavad Gita is more difficult than marriage. I don't know, I can't confirm that, but I'll take your word for it. Yes, this is perhaps the next main excuse that many people come up with. They say, I have so many duties, so many responsibilities, so many roles that I have to play in my life. Let me do all of these things first. Let me tie up all of the different worldly things I have to do. I gotta earn a little bit more so that I can have some in the bank account for my children. I've got the last few things that I have to tie up in my business. You know, I've got a few more payments left on my mortgage, and once I tie all of these things up, once I've fulfilled all of these responsibilities, then I will practice spiritual life. It's interesting that in chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna completely refutes this idea by encouraging each one of us to live a life of integration. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains to Arjuna, Tasmad sarveshu kaleshu mamanusmara yudhyacha mayarpita mano buddhir mame vaisyasya samsayaha. Very interestingly, Krishna says your worldly duties and your spiritual duties don't go in a sequence, but rather they go side by side. Krishna says to Arjuna, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu, at all times, Arjuna, Ma manusmara, remember me, remember your spiritual goal. Yudhyacha, and at the same time do your duty in this world of fighting. Arjuna has many things to balance in his life, and sometimes, well, actually all of the time, we have many things that we have to balance in our lives. We're playing multiple roles. Some of you are playing the role of a father, a mother. Some of you are children. Some of you have duties in your career. You have so many different responsibilities and so many roles, and sometimes it can feel like they're all in conflict. Arjuna wasn't any different. He also had many dharmas. Arjuna had a kula dharma, a duty to his family. Arjuna had a Kshatriya dharma. He had a duty as a warrior. Arjuna had a Pati dharma. He had a duty as a husband. But Krishna looked at Arjuna and he reminded him, yes, you have a Kula dharma. Yes, you have a Kshatriya dharma. Yes, you have a Raja dharma. But never forget that you also have a Sanatan dharma, and those have to go side by side. When we do these two things side by side, you actually live the most successful life. Krishna is not saying don't be a good husband. Krishna is saying be a spiritual husband. Krishna is not saying don't be a good king. Krishna is saying be a spiritual king. Krishna is not saying don't be a father. Krishna is saying be a spiritual father. And therefore, this idea that I have to fulfill all of my responsibilities and then later on I can do my Sanatan Dharma is not something which is endorsed by Krishna or recommended in any way, shape or form. Once the great sage Narad Muni, who's a great devotee, a great renunciate, was traveling across the universe, and he came into the presence of Vishnu, and he asked Vishnu, who is the greatest devotee? Vishnu pointed out a poor farmer, and he said, he is the greatest devotee. Narad Muni was shocked. He said, there are so many sannyasis, there are so many renunciates, there are so many who have given everything up to serve you. How will you say that this poor farmer is the greatest devotee? Vishnu looked at Narad and he said, I'll explain to you, but first I want to give you a task. Here is a bowl and it's full of oil, and it was full to the brim. Vishnu looked at Narad and he said, I know you're traveling across the universe. I want you to continue traveling across the universe, but I want you to carry this bowl full of oil with you and make sure you don't drop one little bit of oil on the ground. Narad Muni took up the task. He held the bowl very carefully, balancing it with all his attention, with all his concentration, and he began traversing the universe. He went around the 3 worlds and came back into Vishnu's presence, and Vishnu said, very good, I can see you haven't spilt one drop of oil. And then he looked at Narad Muni and he said, while you were traveling across the universe, were you chanting Narayan's names? Narad Muni thought for a moment and he said, no, it was difficult to chant Narayan's names because I was doing your work. You gave me a work that required so much attention, that required so much concentration, that required so much balance. How could I, at the same time, chant Narayan's names? Vishnu then looked at the farmer and he said, you see that farmer? He also has many things to balance. He has a family life to balance. He has his job to balance. He has so many other responsibilities to balance. But while doing all of these duties, look at his mouth. And Narad looked and he was chanting Krishna's names. And Vishnu said, therefore I told you, he's the greatest devotee because he's learnt how to do all of his dharmas side by side. And this, dear friends, is the challenge for 2021. Try to begin to live an integrated life where we fulfill all of our material responsibilities and our spiritual responsibilities side by side, because really they should complement and nourish each other. And it only requires some ingenious thinking. So in chapter 3, Krishna reassures us, don't give the excuse that you have too many duties to fulfill, because all duties can, should, and are recommended to be fulfilled side by side.